Hi, my name is Simon Hedley, known to my clients and partners as a strategic alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects, so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello, I'm Simon Hedley, and welcome to today's episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. Today I'm joined by somebody I've known for over a decade and who I know has made a massive dent on the worlds of NLP, personal development and business and so much more. But the truth of it is he's not that well known yet. Well, he is in certain circles, and that's the one and only Bernardo Moya. Now, he is not only an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, a publisher, a TV producer, seminar promoter, and far more than that. He's also the chief inspirational officer of this incredible initiative called The Best You, which I was there in his office talking about over a decade ago, it feels like. And he's already impacting tens of thousands of people with hundreds of the best speakers from all over the world coming to speak at his events. So without further ado, Bernardo, welcome to Pause, Stop, Reset.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much. Delighted to catch up with you.
And that's just a little sliver of who you are. You're over in Spain, I think it is today. I'm here in the UK. But let's start at the beginning. For people that may not know you yet or haven't caught up with your resets, who are you and what are you focused on today?
If anything, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and over 35, 36 years now. But yes, I kind of in the second part of my life, the first part of my life was all real estate, property development, refurbishments, construction companies, selling timeshare, all sorts of things. And then in the second part of my life, I got into personal development, not in a personal way, because I've always been into that, but I got very involved because of, me and the training I did with Richard Bandler, Paul McKenna, and then I became their promoter. So that's what I am. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a promoter of personal development events. My brand is The Best You. And apart from that, I'm also an author, a thinker, and a doer. So kind of that's what I love doing. That's what I'm doing right now.
And it is interesting, isn't it? Everybody in the old days are like, what do you do? Show us your business card pitch in 5 seconds. But the truth of it is more and more people have these portfolio careers. They have fingers in pies. And I've got to know you as somebody that helps other people build out their careers, build out their business streams for years and decades. And like I said, it's kind of weird. People might have heard of The Best You, but might not know it's you and the inspiration for that. And maybe we can just touch on that for a bit and then we'll go forward. When did you first get the idea for The Best You?
Well, it was working with Richard. I became a promoter. I had no experience in running events, but, I went in the deep end. It was when the recession in London, and I started promoting Richard, and I was doing NLP and NLP Life Training, which was a company that I had with him. And so, it was, I think, year 3, year 4, year 5, I started identifying that the personal development world was a very fragmented one where everyone was doing their own thing. Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins, Paul McKenna. And I thought, why isn't there a platform where everyone comes together, where it isn't niche, where anything and everything that is related to personal professional growth, where, everyone can come together under one roof. And that's where I came up with the idea. It started with a magazine. It was The Best You magazine, which we published for 5 or 6 years. And then after that, we which was the idea all the way along, was to create events. And that my flagship event has been the Best You Expo. So that's how it came out. And then after that, years and years moved forward, the event grew exponentially. And then we got an online platform, a TV network now. So it's all kind of materializing now years afterwards.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talking about the fragmentation. That was one of the things I always found fascinating. I jumped between worlds, right? You know me fairly well. And I'd be over in the States and here and meeting different people. And more now it's becoming more specialized. So it's really interesting. And I always like standing and championing those people that do help bring sort of groups together without it turning into sort of the ego cult leader group. Does that make sense? Which a lot of them turn into. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today, really, getting real behind the scenes. And this is sort of a good segue, I think, to sort of your life. What have been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through?
Well, several, obviously, like a lot of us, my first time was when I was 26. My wife, we had already a baby, and he was 6 months, and then she was pregnant again, and I went broke at the age of 26. The first real estate recession in Spain, and then at the age of 40, which was a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult, because as I say, or used to say, I tasted wealth, or what I thought was wealth, and I lost everything. So I've hit rock bottom quite a few times, and I suppose. I don't suppose I know that NLP has or enabled me to kind of, reinvent myself and really have a clearer thinking pattern, to really come out of those things. And I've realized that, if anything, I am resilient, and because I've gone through these situations quite a few times, where very, very, very challenging times, very dark moments. And yeah, I've realized that I am resilient. I'm also kind of happy to change, which is my reinvention, and then also, and just literally start all over again. So that's been it. And then I suppose, obviously, recently with the pandemic, we were a company that used to do very large events, many events a year, and 95% of our revenue disappeared overnight. And it's been 3 years kind of exploring and reinventing the company and reinventing myself too. So, it's been an interesting 3 years. I think they've been very productive for me personally, spiritually and consciously. So, it's been great, I suppose, to a degree.
I love how you shared that. And it is sort of with that hindsight, right? Of course, there was this sort of lockdown thing to deal with for a few years. And I must admit, when I sort of saw you guys in the event industry going through it, I didn't know what to say or do. The best ones pivoted. The worst, not worst, the most challenging scenarios were companies that all they had was physical experiences, and they hadn't got that digital expertise or hadn't got the relationships to pivot into it. And companies with like 10, 20-year track histories went down the drain. We'll probably get into it sort of later on, but I'm guessing that, as you say, the spiritual side has come out of it. And that's in some ways what this is about, this sort of remembering we all have to go through these pause, stop, reset moments. I love also how you sort of can say it now, like going sort of from where you were with that taste of wealth to hitting rock bottom a few times. Do you think that's something that sort of all entrepreneurs eventually go through? I remember growing up thinking never had to happen, right? If we model excellence, it won't have happened. But actually, the more you get behind successful entrepreneurs, they've all, I think, had this sort of up and down moments more than once.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I don't think unless you've gone through these periods and unless you failed, and hey, who hasn't? Look at, the Richard Bransons, the Elon Musks, the Bill Gates, it doesn't matter. Everyone to a certain degree has failed, but it's what makes you stronger, what makes you wiser. So for me, I've realized over the years, and especially now, I think with a lot of the training I've had, but also kind of the more I've read and the more I've tapped into kind of my own spirituality and being and who I am and what I'm here for, you start realizing that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So, I'm always reading between the lines, I'm connecting the dots. Why are things happening for me? What am I going to learn from this? What's going to happen next? So I'm looking at everything that happens to me as just a teaching or a learning opportunity. So, although it does affect me, because it does, and it has affected me financially and spiritually and from a stress level point of view, I deal with it a lot better now. So, I think any entrepreneur that consider themselves an entrepreneur has to go through these periods. It's essential.
No, I love it. Thank you. We talk about these three aspects of pausing, stopping, and resetting. I'm just curious which of those has been the hardest for you, and why do you think that was?
I think they're all necessary, aren't they? I mean, as you know, Simon, it's the name of your program. But I think, stopping is something that we all need to do at a certain time. We also have to pause. We have to kind of learn and just literally spend a little bit of time in our heads and thinking and meditating and then exploring why this is happening. And then, kind of restarting again is just part of the process. It's just what you can do or should do. But I think they all have served me, and I couldn't see me not going through any of those phases in order to grow. I think they're all essential parts of becoming a better human. And I know, kind of it's something that I find myself saying more and more every day now, but I just think that kind of I feel that the world is at a point right now where leaders have to step forward and and more people have to hold the flag and the responsibility of helping or contributing towards change and to making the world a better place. Because, I believe, and I was one of those that used to say, oh, well, that's quite cheesy. Well, the fact is that it's not, and it's a reality. There's too much tension. There's too much what makes us different. There's too much. We have to be focusing on what brings us together. And in this phase of my life, I'm really focusing more on love and elevating consciousness and bringing love to the forefront of the conversations that we all have in life in general, but especially coaches, authors, trainers, mentors. Yeah. I think we have to bring that more to the forefront to our clients, customers, students, so we can hopefully have this phenomenal ripple effect that needs to materialize in the coming years.
No, 100%. I think again, love is a huge subject. I know you've been writing some stuff about that recently, quite a lot. I think exploring what it means, the different aspects of love, and it's the bit. If it just be blunt, right? The marketing industry 20 years ago, 10 years ago, a lot of it was fear-based, scarcity-based selling. It was all push marketing, like, don't miss out. Today is Black Friday. We're recording this, right? And the number of crazy deals going on, which isn't really driven from making a difference, contribution, and love. Some would say it all is, but there's definitely something weird about that. And I don't know about your view, as I've traveled the world, I see there's a confusion with kids and families, like what that looks like in the modern world we're moving into. I'm old enough to remember the time before the internet, before OnlyFans, before Tinder, when you'd meet somebody and you'd court them, you go and build a relationship over time, right? Versus where we're at now, not judging it, it's just a confusing thing. So any thoughts on that before we move on as given you're exploring love and championing love at the moment?
Yeah, I think there was a documentary on Netflix which is based on a book which is The Minimalist, which is this essence or the idea of that obviously from the 60s, as you were pointing out, companies, brands, and advertising agencies were out there just to get us to buy more because it would bring us what we needed, happiness, bigger cars, bigger houses, more clothes, more shoes, more expensive handbags, and all these things. And I remember it had a phenomenal impact. And you look at this, the carbon print of a T-shirt that someone is making in China, which you're paying $6, you wear once, and collecting things. So for me, it's been a combination of that, of separating from my wife, and then the loss of my mom, and all these other things, and realizing that what I have and what I travel with now is 2 suitcases, and I've got a couple of other suitcases in my son's house, and that's it. So less is more. We don't need more to become happier, and I think we're in this world of consuming and using and thinking that that's what's going to give us happiness. In this fake world of social media where everyone is fantastic, happy, smile, great, look thin, fit, happy, and as you're pointing out, we communicate less, we talk less, and we just hide under this fakeness of material things. So yes, I believe that the world is confused to a degree by following, these trends that we've been, brainwashed with. But on the other hand, there's hope. There's a lot of people that are bringing this to the forefront, where we're having deeper conversations. We're really looking at what can help the environment, what can save the environment. And that's what I think is the shift that needs to happen. That's where I think, and I hope I can contribute to a degree, with the Best You and all the brand. And what we do is to bring these conversations to the forefront, instead of, how you can become a best-selling author, how you can make 6 million this year, which has been all this, kind of, I don't know what to call it, everything that's been sold to us in the world, but also in the personal development world, which I'm not a big fan of.
No, I know. And I think you and I know more about sort of the skeletons in the closet, not bad things, but there was always the speaker on stage and then what their business was behind the scenes. And I'm laughing about it because you couldn't make it up often, but at the same time, it's a different world of people. And I still remember the first time I saw somebody generate, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000, $1 million in an hour on stage. My brain was like, I spent 10 years in banking. That's not possible. What's going on? But also, it isn't for everybody. It just, the actual logistics of numbers don't make sense. But what I really loved about what you're sharing is, and let's not go too heavy for this afternoon's phone call, as they say. When you do lose some people you can't bring back, you do realize what's important. I lost Catherine, who was my Thai teacher since I was 16. Catherine Allen passed away about a year ago. And since I was 14, I was a gold medalist Tai Chi with her, 20 years in. And when she passed and Dan passed, there's nobody else that is even close to teaching what they knew. And it's weird because it isn't about the photos and the recordings and the, whatever else, but it's those relationships. And even you and I can apologize on the phone call. Like, you and I haven't caught up for a coffee, a sandwich in ages because you've been busy, I've been busy, life's happening, and it's not a personal thing. It's just what happens in this sort of hyper connected world. So I really love that you brought that up. And I hear, let's sort of take it out. You are bringing that to the world, and that's what this is about. And that's all we can do, even if it is sort of the starfish stuff behind the scenes. And
yeah, absolutely. The thing is, what you focus expands. I think, for me, kind of in this last 6-8 months where, I produced an event which was meant to be live. And then because of the pandemic, again, it was online, which was called the Love Event. Well, it brings us together, real conversations around consciousness, kindness, and was something that it was beautiful because I had so many people coming to me, wanting to be part of that. And so many amazing individuals, really out there going and making a big difference. So it's just based on that. What you put out, you receive, and what you focus on expands. And I think we all have that responsibility of really valuing. And it's the same with me. I lost my mom, but I also lost a really good couple of really great friends during the pandemic. One of them was a great mentor for me, Bernie Dorman.
Bernie was amazing. And this is a great example. Like, you and I and Bernie never had a three-way conversation. I've known Bernie for 10 years. And my biggest regret is that it's funny to know you in the way you did. I would ask to bring CO Space to the UK and never managed to make it happen. Did you actually go through CO Space with Bernie? Yes.
I went there twice.
It's phenomenal, right? Phenomenal. And I remember going, we need this in the UK, but I was like early 30s and I'm still not that guy to make that happen. And this is why I love doing the show. Honestly, we sort of dot connect a bit. And I think there's more of that coming. I think there always has been, and that's part of the fun sometimes, and that roller coaster of life. And let's go back to a sort of slightly cliched question. I do like the cliche sometimes. My blind date training as a young kid watching Cilla Black. The classic sort of NLP timeline thing. If you could sort of send back advice, a lesson to your younger Bernardo, right? What's the biggest or most important lesson you wish you could give your younger self, and why?
Yeah, I suppose was it would have probably been a little bit more to enjoy the moments, but I think it was more than anything is in not really trying to force it or push it as much as I was, because I was driven towards making great events and producing great events and bringing phenomenal people together. But although the essence was there was something missing. And I think, I would have rather had maybe smaller events with more meat to them. And not that we didn't. Listen, my last event in London, we had 14,000 people, 180 speakers. So it was an Olympia, it was my biggest, best event. But I think if anything, it was more about bringing a lot more love to the conversations in making sure that everyone that was involved was more aligned with where I am today. But look, it's all part of the process. I think that although in hindsight, which is a great thing to have if you could, I think at the end of the day, we've got to go through the journey. We have to travel through it to learn from it. And I definitely have. So no, I don't have any regrets as such. I just think if anything, I just would have slowed down a little bit more. And if anything, maybe I would have loved to have been in the States sooner. I just think that kind of I think it was my natural place. And just before I moved to the US, so I took the Best You Expo to LA, and just literally 2 weeks before, the pandemic happened, and then it was start all over again.
I wonder what it is as a British person back then, right? Because many of us didn't go to Dubai. We didn't go out to Asia and Africa and America the way people now do. Does that make sense? And it wasn't limited mindset. It was just, it seemed more difficult to go and connect. And I know people like ourselves have been connecting, right? Why do you think that was, that there wasn't more sort of the Brits going to the States regularly? And I guess it was a big adventure to sort of go across and do things in LA, to do things in Miami, in Arizona, Chicago. It's huge, right? There's a scale thing. And I think we still got that at some level. Like, have you been out to Africa much yet? To Gambia or to Ghana, Nigeria?
No, I haven't. To be honest, I haven't. And although I have traveled quite a lot during the pandemic, it was more about my own self exploration, not for business point of because we have still been going through the pandemic for the last 3 years. But I think it's probably because we get comfortable, to a degree. It's our area, it's our turf, it's what we know, it's who we know, it's where our list is. I've always had, my plan was always to kind of run events all around the world and do the Best UX. But we were in conversations to have one in Thailand, one in Miami, in India, Mumbai. We were talking about having one in Canada. So I was already exploring that, but I wasn't really fearful. I did one in Long Beach, 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. But I think it's just because, we're just comfortable. And if anything, I think, especially now, I think the way things are in London or in the UK at the moment, I think there's never been a better time to open up.
Yeah.
To open up, to explore, to take your expertise to other parts of the world. Because if I have learned anything from running events in London, and, we did some very successful and big events in London, I think if anything, I realized the level of expertise that there is in the UK. And you know this, Simon, as well. That there's phenomenal experts and phenomenal expertise. And I was very humble when I went to the US because I thought, wow, what am I going to teach the Americans about putting events together? But the fact is, when I got there, I was surprised or shocked to see that some of the events that I thought should have been pretty phenomenal were pretty poor, from a production point of view, from a quality delivery point of view, from the way it was marketed. So kind of I realized that the type of events we were doing in London were kind of the Rolls Royce or Bentley, the level, So I think there's never been a better time for all of us to go out there and explore other countries and other cultures. And I feel that there's deep admiration, and I know you've seen this as well, Simon, that if you're a Brit and you go to the US, they listen to you. It doesn't matter what you talk about. They just love your accent. And, and if you've got some expertise, because it's international, comes from the UK, they seem to think that it's more credible, which, hopefully 9 out of 10 times it is. And I'm lucky enough that I'm also, because I'm bilingual, I'm Spanish, I have that as well. So when I go to the US and I speak in Spanish, I get into the Latino market as well. So they admire and respect what comes from Europe. So, and I'm not only talking about the US, I'm talking about anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting juncture. Some of the stuff we haven't really talked about, you and I, behind the scenes, tech is getting to the point of enabling real-time, authentic translation. Properly translating Spanish to English isn't just like copying the words Google Translate. That has a nuance factor, as a communication factor. And when you can talk live and wherever you are in the world to anyone else in the world in their native language, that opens up something. And it's quite extraordinary, like how the different cultures, language structures, one of our friends, Dylan, in Japan, this nuance of communication, which I didn't know existed. And it sounds, it's not to sort of change the subject too much, but it's something about that bilingual nature for you. And just to sort of reinforce it, you've always had that heart for helping. You were never sort of the evil shark Bernardo, from my perspective, compared to others that were just like, people are walking wallets, ha ha ha. It's like, no, actually help. I still remember, just an acknowledgement to Dr. Richard Bandler here, that day when you had, I brought Jonathan Chase to meet you, and there was somebody in the room talking about his experience, and Richard just told it straight. We called Ruthless Compassion. You're not an NLP practitioner, even though the guy thought he was. What he was doing wasn't the stuff. And there's always been a heart behind it. And I do think it's an interesting time where we are realizing shifts are required. And you also reminded me of Marissa. I know you've been helping share her work out there. She was the one that enforced that, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is a really challenging thing to do when you are comfortable sometimes. And I'm just curious, what books, what movies help you sort of get a kickstart, get you out of your head? Recently, the recent Tom Cruise one with Top Gun, Maverick, that wasn't the movie I expected it to be, but it's what we needed to see at that point in time. It was a great movie. And there's such amazing movies and books that have been written, so many of them. And I know you've been around this world a lot. What are your sort of top books, movies that help you, or you'd recommend others to help them pause, stop, reset?
For me, I am a movie guy, and I do love movies. I like action, thrillers, but I'm a massive Tarantino fan. I'm a massive Guy Ritchie fan. But I think for me, what does it is documentaries. I just love watching all sorts of documentaries, and there's some phenomenal stuff out there, and that's kind of what it got me excited with when we kind of launched our channel was to see our TV channel was to see, what we could put out there and what we can create and what we can eventually do through TV. But I think with the documentaries as such, I think they just do such a phenomenal service. I mean, for example, The Power of Psychedelics, which is a great documentary on Netflix, all about psilocybin. And then I also, one of the books that is also a documentary is How to Change Your Mind with the Power of Psychedelics. I think it's Michael Polak. There's also a documentary on that. So I've been very interested in psychedelics and exploring that, but also kind of seeing and understanding. There's also, I think is it called David Hancock, which is he's also a documentary on Netflix about history. And I've been interested in UFOs, but I've actually encountered or connected with someone who will be speaking at our event, the Best Way Explore, Caroline Corrie. She's got a documentary which is available on Amazon. I think it's available on YouTube as well now, called Superhuman: the Power of Impossible Made Possible. Yeah. So I love documentaries. I love podcasts. I follow Joe Rogan. And then, I'm an Audible kind of guy. I think I was probably one of the first ones on Audible many, 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 many years ago because I'm dyslexic. So I struggle kind of reading and I love listening to audiobooks. So I'm into a lot of Sadhguru now. I've been liking him for quite some time. Osho. I kind of really explore and open. And then one of the things that I assume you've managed to do as well, Simon, you're very well connected, know a lot of people over the years, is if I've managed to do anything and understand anything is that every single thing is connected, and it's down to us to see what that connection is. Why is that bit of information message coming to us? So you see, I met Caroline Corrie, and then I saw that documentary. That documentary is phenomenal because it's an eye opener about consciousness and how we have to tap into our consciousness and how the ego gets involved in what we're doing. And if we shut the ego down, we're able to do phenomenal, amazing things. But then you see, I met someone who then introduced me to Caroline. Then I saw the documentary, and then there was a professor in there who I now interviewed, and then he introduced me to someone else. So I'm always listening to, why is this person coming to me? Or if, for example, I don't know, Michael Beckwith, who's a guy that I've been following for quite some time, but I've had a conversation with two different people in 2 different weeks. And his name's come up. So I'm getting the message. Okay, I need to connect with him. There's a reason why.
And if you know Mike, you've got to meet Ricky as well. And Ricky gave me $1 10 years ago, became a client for life. And Mike went, she's my wife, I get you to. And that was all through Lynn Rose, who I know that you know. It's a hyper small world. But what we're doing now is what I think often gets forgotten. It's all like, so do you want my funnel? It's like, who are you? What's going on? And there's such a rush to do stuff. There's no time to actually sort of properly relax into things, and yet that's when all the good stuff is.
And listen, I think part of, if NLP teaches you things is to become aware, but also listen. Why is this happening to me, for me? Why is this name popping up now? There's a reason. What is that reason? Let's connect. Let's see why, and then follow it through. And I think I always say that opportunities to change or opportunities are the size of petrol tankers, but people are able to walk around them. So connecting those dots, understanding why these things are happening, and then following them through and taking action is a really important part. And the reason I say this is because, the universe, God, our higher self, they don't use Instagram or they don't use WhatsApp to message people. They have to communicate via third parties, via a message you see on Instagram or something, and we just have to be open to listen.
No, I love that, and I'm thinking back to a couple other conversations that I might segue back into. But you've got me smiling, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you live again. It's been far too long, and it's like there's something about transmission conversation. I'm guessing you bumped into that a bit in your travels recently. You come across transmission experiences?
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that as a Westerner we don't really talk about. And I've been doing other stuff for a long time, and more I understand there is this sort of thing when you've been around people that you pick up. I know Tony is a master at lots of stuff, Tony Robbins, but including that full body shifting people's state stuff. I also think there's part of this world of often they call them wisdom keepers in one space. They do stuff very quietly. You know what I mean? It's like the billionaires walking around London. Most of them haven't got security. You wouldn't know they're billionaires. And then most of the ones that have made it 20, 30 years doing really deep work and making a big shift, they're not Instagram. Not about the money, by the way. Often the way the people I most value have made the impact, it isn't necessarily in ways you know about, but they're the guys that made a patent on something that really shifted an industry, or they transform stuff, often which we take for granted today. And I think it's a fascinating space and time. And again, I love these conversations because they end up in places I wouldn't have expected. You touched on a bit earlier about, the separation, the losses, the business stuff. What do you think was, and how to say it nicely, or not too challengingly, what was the event experience that most caused you to have to sort of go through a pause, stop, reset, and what helped you through that? Because for me, they have been dark night to the soul at times, and it is those unexpected things that got me through. I'm just curious, what helped you through your challenging pause, stop, reset moments?
Writing. I enjoy writing more and more, and I, although for me, the loss of my mum. So I was in a 30-year relationship with my ex, and we separated. Then I fell in love. Then I fell out of love, and then as I fell out of love, then I lost my mum. This was through the whole pandemic, and kind of spending a lot of time alone in different. Although I did travel a lot, but I was in different locations. But writing is what's really helped me, is what's really kind of soothed me and bathed my soul, because it was the only thing that could really help me. And it was when I started when I started tapping into kind of just letting go and being vulnerable and expressing my feelings. And I believe, and I did know, I have known for quite some time, there was more to me than what I was, i.e. the promoter and bringing people together, the conduit. I really wanted to explore who Bernardo was, because I have felt this sense of responsibility whereby if I was promoting Bandler, I had to be great, and an LP, I had to be good as a promoter. And if I'm putting the best due, I have to make the best events, but also I had to be congruent. I can't be the founder of the best due and be a miserable, terrible, sad, fat, overweight, kind of guy. So congruency is a key word for me. So I had to be congruent. But I took this downtime to really explore who is Bernardo and tap into that. And the more I wrote and the more I let go and the more I just let my unconscious or, my deeper self and my higher self, kind of express what I thought. And a lot of the times the things that I would write, Simon, sometimes I would write them and it was just literally flowing. I was flowing. I didn't even know where it was coming from. And sometimes I would read it. I thought, wow, this is actually quite good, Bernardo. Do you know what I mean? This is like a McKenna impersonation there. This is quite good, Bernardo. And I was quite surprised and shocked. But that really helped me. It was tough. It was really, really tough. It took me like a year and a half to put it together. And also because I was writing it in English and Spanish, some of them in Spanish and translating to English. But that's what's really helped me. And I love that. And I was rejecting the promoter aspect of me. I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to promote anymore because I just really wanted to focus on my own career as a writer. But I realized that I've got that sense of responsibility still where I can do both, but I just maybe need to direct or redirect a little bit more, the message of the best you, so it becomes deeper and more aligned with the me, the new me. And that's where I'm at. And that's what's really helped me writing.
No, I love that. And just to acknowledge sort of your mother in this conversation. I never met your mother. I get the love you have for her and she had for you in all the ways she is and all that was. I'm not digging into it for today, but there's nobody on planet Earth that's here without a mum. It's one of those roles that I think as a man you can't really understand. We try to go, I get it, but we don't. Yeah, our mums are quite extraordinary. True story. Terry, who's one of our amazing guests, good friend of mine, amazing person I'll introduce you to at some point. I would love to introduce you to. I actually went to him to start doing grief counselling for my mum, who hopefully will be here for 10 years. Because I know I can't handle mum not being around. Does that make sense? It's like, I'm laughing about it, but mum's awesome. And I got really present, just sort of the enormity of who she's been for me and so many other people over the years. And
I understand. And, kind of I get it. I can hear it in your voice, and I understand kind of, and I think we will all be there, and we'll all be that place, kind of. It's just such a big, deep, dark hole. And when she leaves, and it doesn't matter, I can write about her, or I can, and there's a few poems and thoughts around my mum, and it doesn't matter, tears still come to my eyes, and thoughts and regrets, because at the end of the day, although I was very close to my mum and we had a very close bond, there were so many more things I could have done, should have done, and so if anything, I'll just honor her with sharing more love and expressing love and admiring women in general, because she was a phenomenal woman.
Yeah, and the other thing to sort of draw out there is I think there's something shifting about how ideas people get shared. Technologies like you and I are doing this Zoom recording our podcast today, but not in the same space. And the audio will be 1,000 times better than what you and I could have done 20 years ago with £100,000 tech in London, right? The quality standards have shifted. The internet speeds are changing. And I think the way people are going to share information, engage with ideas, even their resources, I sense there's something new coming. I don't know what it is, actually, if I'm honest. I thought I did. And I'm really hopeful there's a different way of helping the right people find the right ways forward. One of my biggest challenges is that people who are looking for help often find the ones who are best at positioning and marketing. Does that make sense? Not necessarily the best actually helpers. Somebody can have a one-day coaching course, nothing wrong with it, and then suddenly they're $100,000 a day coach because the website looks okay, and they not rip people off. That would get me in trouble. But let's just say it's a tricky space out there, right?
Yeah, it is.
So you've been around the block for more than a day. What advice, what takeaway would you give somebody listening that you really want them left with? Not the misspeaking Bernardo, but like what Bernardo said what's your sort of, that's Bernardo rule 101. Like for me, it's assume nothing and confirm everything. Like don't make assumptions about yourself and other people. Try and stay in inquiry. Right? Easy to say, hard to do. Right? I've learned that the hard way myself. What's one of your biggest? I want people to get that.
Well, I think if anything is for people to really explore what is their purpose. I mean, my previous book was called The Question. Yeah, find your true purpose, and it is basically in the essence. It's not an NLP book, although it might have some. But it was. If I learned anything from Richard, and I know, and funny, I didn't even know. I only found out afterwards. But there's a similar quote from Tony. But I wrote this myself. Was that the quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So. Yeah. I believe that, and if I learned anything from NLP was to become aware of my internal dialogue, and if I've done anything, and if I managed to achieve anything, is just that I ask myself always, constantly, permanently, is empowering questions. So of course I'm aware of my inner thoughts. I'm aware of when I am being negative, and if I am, but I'm always focusing on what is the solution. That's always been my objective. So I simply want to encourage people to ask themselves what are they here for, to stop, to pause, to basically really look at where they are. And if I share something as well, which I've been sharing recently, which is no rocket science, which is that the older I get, is the reality is my mortality. That's my reality. My mortality is getting closer. So because of that, I need to focus on what can I do and what am I going to do in order to leave the world in a better place, So every thinker, every explorer, every inventor, anyone that's designed anything has always asked themselves empowering questions. How can I get quicker? How can I become great? How can I make a difference? How can I climb that mountain? How can I fly? So, I just want everyone to stop and pause and really think what their purpose is. What am I here for? What can I do? How can I make a difference? And if they do that and they start focusing on that, and then it is also around love, kind of like, who could do with some love today? Who haven't I said I love you to for quite some time? Who could do with a kind word? And so really focus on bringing love, because, if that's what you start becoming, then you start oozing love, and then you're going to start attracting love and bringing love and having loving thoughts, and people are going to want to be with you, and your energy is going to ooze. So, just simply focus on what's important, focus on what you're here for, because, there's just too much noise out there. There's too many things happening. There's too many negative news out there. There's too many fake stories out there. And kind of, as the name of your show, you have to stop, pause and reset and really look at who do you want to become, and what are you going to leave behind? What's your legacy going to be? Because you want to be memorable, don't you? You want people to say, oh my God, I love this about him, or I love, oh, look what he did, or look what he left, or look at the book that he wrote, or something. Just leave the world in a better place. And you're only going to do that if you stop, pause, and reset.
I love that. I really do. And you say it very eloquently, probably in Spanish also. My delegation plan. One thing I touched on, or I heard you talk about, right, is how these ideas of questions. And it's interesting, like, you more than most got to meet Bernie and got to meet probably Jim Rohn in the past. You ever meet Jim live?
No, I wish I did. For me, he was a hero. I mean, I loved Jim Rohn, I still listen to his audible now and then, because never met him, unfortunately.
And then, the reason I mentioned it, some of these ideas go back to Napoleon Hill. They go back 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 years. But we didn't have the recordings we do today. So these sort of mystery schools, these wisdom schools, these grandma's common sense stuff that I always think is common sense, but it isn't. And then vice versa, sort of the missing question. Like, I never had that question. It's a really good question, and things open up. And one thing I was present to, I really loved what you said. And for so many people listening in, they'll take that on. The one I've been trying to solve now for nearly 20 years, especially the last 10 years, and especially the last 3 months. If somebody's listening today and things are really in the poo-poo, in the dud, like not good, right? They're struggling to pay the rent this week. They don't know what they're doing. They have no friends and family they can turn to. What's a good thing they can do? Because it's all very well, like, do your gratitude journal, Simon. It's like, yeah, it's great, but doesn't necessarily move the needle. Does that make sense? And just if you had anything in your tool set from your travels, from the property deals, the entrepreneur space, the inner work you've been doing, what's something they could draw on, or they could share with a friend that's going through that. I like doing that, by the way, empowering others to ask the questions to other people. Part of my cunning plan with the Happy Thoughts app, for example. So what's something they could do if their friend or them is really in a tough situation today?
Well, I think if someone's in the poo-poo and someone's asking for help, I think, a lot of the times, we might become insular. If I'm the person in that situation where I'm going through a dark moment and I don't know what to do, I don't know what the answer is, I don't know what the solution is. Well, first of all, tap into yourself, because I think a lot of the times you will have the answers if you just, again, stop, pause and think, but if not, just simply go out there and ask for help, because, I think you'll be surprised of how many people, and there's so much love in this industry, although, we can both be fairly, critical at times, but there's so much love. There's so many people that are so generous. There's so many people that would, help you, advise you, and say to you. But I think, we just have to be open and exploring and doing different things. We have to be open to change. I mean, for me, one of the things that I've done is I've really explored how I could elevate my consciousness, and I just literally brushed through kind of talking about psychedelics. But I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a lot about that, because there are, there's this microdosing, LSD trips, mushroom trips, and I'm not talking about this people doing that on their own at home. I'm talking about getting together with someone who's done it, who's a pro. But I think there's so many ways to tap into your consciousness now, if you read and if you're open to that you could really find the solution a lot quicker. I think sometimes, or a lot of the times, just because our ego gets in the way. I mean, for me, one of the things that had a phenomenal impact for me a couple of years ago was I had an ayahuasca experience in Peru. So for me, it was absolutely phenomenal. It was an eye opener, and I never understood what a spiritual awakening meant till I did that.
That's what a real one is. Got it now. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
They say a 2x4 to the third eye. It's like,
yes. So I just think that people have to be open to explore new things, to learn new things, to ask for help. But I'm a great believer that we all have phenomenal wisdom within us and knowledge within us. I think, if you think, I didn't really believe in reincarnation until I had my ayahuasca, but I always thought that was an old soul. I think a lot of the times, we come up with answer solutions. For me, as I said, when I write now, I think there's some stuff that comes to me that's so deep that it can't be mine, And I think, that's one of the things that I've loved exploring. But if you think about it, just think about it. You're here today, and we're both here today. So imagine, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and you go back and back and back, and you can go back 20, 30, 40 generations. Well, 30, 40 generations ago, great-great-great-great-grandpa and grandma got together, and they went through all their experiences, all their knowledge, everything that they went through, a very different time to today. And all that information is in that DNA, and it's been passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on. And it's here with you here today now. So kind of, that knowledge and that wisdom is within you. If only you just simply, shut it down, shut the ego down, and start exploring kind of, what your purpose is and what you're here for and what you're going to do. So I'm a great believer that we do have the answers ourselves, Simon. But then I think, on the other hand, there's just so much great material out there to read and to learn from and to explore and to be open. We can't have all the answers, and a lot of the times, Bandler used to use this analogy of phones. I say, well, you don't use the same phone you had 16 years ago because it was really heavy. It was a brick. It did nothing. You obviously got the latest version, or you download the latest software. Well, it's the same with our mind and with our head. We have to be downloading and downloading and downloading, more information that's a little bit more accurate than it was when we were at school, when we read books that weren't necessarily relevant to us. So tap into who you are, and what you know, because a lot of the answers may already be there.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing to sort of put that heart back as well into the equation, right, is that often our heart knows, and we sort of got the mind and the thoughts and the feelings got a bit confused, right? Our younger selves, our inner child, which might have been in our 40s, right? It's like, I'm an adult. Yeah, no, we're still in a child.
Yeah.
We're still going through it, and we sort of take that feeling. And it's so hard sometimes just to take a breath and allow and take one step forward. I love you didn't market yourself more than you could have done, but one of my recommendations is check out The Best You, because it's a great resource, and just notice where you go, who's that person? And then just feel into it. And Terry sort of taught me this little trick, Bernardo, which is like, if the feeling is warm and open and expansive, it's usually a good sign. If it feels cold and spiky, it's usually not a good feeling. It's usually your thoughts saying back off a bit. Sometimes that's a good thing, but when it's good because you open up and you go, I'm home, and you can't fake it. It's when you've had visceral experience of like, this is a good space. It might be in nature. It might be in the park. It might be a song. And at some level we do know, and that contrast allows us to self-navigate, even though we're in a world that's getting more and more chaotic and confusing seemingly by the day. And I love that remembering of the grandparents. Can you imagine our great grandparents going, you talk to somebody in Spain, are you a witch? Like it wasn't possible, right? It's like stuff we do now that's sort of trivial. Yeah, you take a high definition 4K photo. You did what? On a phone? Okay. It's a different world, and that's exciting. And I think we're sort of getting to the fun bit, as we say, time to pause, stop, reset. For people that want to learn more about you, what you're up to, what's the best website, the best way for them to get in contact and connect with you and what you're up to in the world? Because I'm sure some old friends, some new friends will be going, oh, Bernardo, we should reach out. What's the best way for them to do that these days?
Well, my webpage is bernardo-moya.com, bernardomoya.com. There's a few little things about me on the internet, and they're not all true. So Bernardo.
Oh, I love that. Which ones aren't? Find out more next week. No.
bernardomoya.com. And then, yes, The Best You and kind of what we're really involved in. Our next events are in LA. So we got thebestYouExpo.com. Anyone can check it out if they want to get involved or want to come and see what we're doing. But yeah, that's me, really.
And I get a sense you're sort of not like I'm finished. Your sort of journey begins, right? It's sort of you're learning and growing and sharing as you go now more and more. Is that the case?
Yes, it is. And the title of my latest book is called A Man Evolving. So it's A Man Evolving, Confessions about monogamy, passion, and broken hearts. And so I was thinking, because I finished the book just now, and obviously I'm already starting to write the next one. And I think, well, what's next after A Man Evolving? The man continues to evolve. So kind of like, I'm in that process of really evolving and exploring kind of who I am and where I want to go. And I love it. I'm absolutely excited about this next chapter. where I can share deeper conversations around the important things in life. Because, we're not going to be thinking, in our deathbed, oh my God, who's going to be wearing my Louis Vuitton, or, who's going to be driving my Porsche? No, we won't be thinking about that. We'll be thinking about, kind of the people that we loved, beautiful memories, and who makes us happy, who's made us happy, who's around my deathbed, or who's going to miss me. Those are the kind of things that we're going to be thinking about. So I want to bring those types of conversations to the forefront now, and also to push people. I worked with I work with a lot of people, and one of the things that I can't remember who it was said now is that there is no they. So I think if anything, I'm trying to really encourage people to step up, and to hold, to be responsible, to lead, to be visionaries. I think we all have that responsibility, and there's a lot of people that just look. And that's what I think. There's three types of people, Simon. I think there's those that, even if they're in their 20s or 30s, are literally, walking dead already, because they've just got that job. They're not really looking at changing. They don't want to do anything. They're just going to keep doing the less they can. They don't want to have any sense of responsibility at all. They don't want to change. They don't want to learn. They don't want to grow. They're just happy to be who they are. And hey, good for them. There's those that are looking at others that are making the change, those that are admiring those leaders. Oh my God, I love him. And they follow him or follow her. And then there's those that go out and step up and make the world a better place, that change or are changing the world. And we need more of those. We need more people. Because again, I think from the beginning of time, there's been 110 or 111 billion people. And I always ask, well, out of those 110, 111 billion people from the beginning of time, how many of them have actually really, really made change? And I appreciate not everyone can be an inventor, not everyone can become, kind of an astronaut and things like that. But I think there needs to be more people that step up.
No, I love that. Have you been around Buckminster Fuller's work much?
Not a lot. I know I've obviously heard a few stories from Richard. I've heard a few stories from someone. Yeah.
So just based on what I'm hearing today, there's a book called Operator's Manual for Spaceship Earth. It's one I'd recommend for you. We actually 2 days ago were talking about it. Somebody should make the documentary. I'd love to do that with you, because there's an idea called being a trim tab, where you can just nudge something with a question without having to seemingly lead the conversation, but you do. You do it masterfully. And I love what you're touching on. And we did a thing in the IOD 2015 talking about future leadership. Because part of the paradox is that old army leadership of right, boys, let's go this way. Come on. That doesn't work in the world we're moving into. So I love the leadership thing of stepping up, making a difference. It's so required. It's what's been driving me and some others, not insane, but frustrated, fascinated, watching how few people will say anything while seemingly being nice, but actually the being nice doesn't make a difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Being willing to go, actually, this isn't okay. But without stepping into dictatorship of, no, you must eat your carrots on the left-hand side of your plate. Well, no, that's just silly example for you. But there's a bit of common sense that used to be there that seems to have got lost in a world of hyper recording and hyper data points being taken out of context. I mean, this communication is so easy to do and so easy to go wrong, right? Almost that there's an old joke, the fallacy of communication, thinking that actually has been a communication, is the biggest error in communication.
Interesting.
So I think we're just starting, sir. And have you got a podcast yet, Bernardo? Are you out there sharing your thoughts with people regularly on a podcast?
Yes, it's been around for a few years, and I've interviewed quite a few people, obviously, over the years. It's called Inspiring People. I'm really looking at revamping that a little bit more. But yeah, there's some great people I've interviewed over the years, and there's a lot more coming. But yes, I've got a podcast. I've got a Spanish podcast. We got lots of content. There's lots of content on the Best You TV as well. That all the talks from previous expos and so much stuff out there. But no, Simon, listen, I respect you very much. And when I was asking, well, who's Simon? My EA was asking, who's Simon? So, well, Simon's been around for a few years. He knows everyone. and he's just been a guy that's always stayed in touch, even when, and as you said, we haven't met for quite a few years, we haven't had a coffee or a sandwich or nothing, but kind of you're always there. So I really appreciate that about you, and I appreciate what you brought and what you're bringing, because you're always current. So congratulations on all your great work.
Well, that means a lot. And also, I've often been doing this weird job in the background that no one knows I was doing, because I sort of didn't get paid to do it. I got given a £1 coin by Debbie Scott once. that was my gift. She says, go do this. So I've actually been working on getting every kid in the UK off benefit permanently now for over a decade. Not a mandate, not a government thing. Just, that's a good idea. That was. I like good ideas. And then I get bored and sort of go to work. And I really appreciate you saying that. I'm actually quite touched, because often I feel like the outsider. It's actually sort of part of the fun about it. And I was actually thinking this before. Have you met Carlos Anaya yet? Met my friend Carlos?
No.
You and Carlos need to talk. That's one of those sort of, that's why we're talking today moments. He's Latin American in Miami, super fabulous, and has been doing stuff with Sadhguru. I met him 10 years ago in New York, and I have no idea why I was meeting him at the time. Other than you just meet.
I'd love to connect. Actually, I was trying to see if I could actually get Sadhguru to come to the expo. I love him.
Well, this is where I call strategic alchemy moments. You can't make it up sometimes.
No, you can't.
You start having these meetings that didn't have invites, where like you'll be walking down the street and go, "What are you doing here? I'm doing this and this and this and this." And that's truthfully is how Tony Robbins runs Business Mastery. Somebody had a conversation like that, and you'll never know who it was unless he talks about it a lot. But even then, is that the whole truth? And the whole truth is we're wrapping up today's show, but I think it's been an absolute pleasure. And Bernardo, I think you're just beginning to share more of who you are. And I can't wait to see you out there with your own Netflix documentaries, because you've got that TV production background, you've got these relationships. And I think it's time we make a bigger shift out there, because the world needs more love. It needs more wisdom. And we need to have a different shift to the conversation, I think. And also with people that have been around the block for decades in this work, seeing the ripples of that over time, right? And that's what's exciting for me. If you hadn't done what you did for Paul and Richard back in the day, we wouldn't be having these conversations today. Not at all. Both in the business world and in the personal world, because often the students go to these people, they go to Best View, and you don't tend to hear what happens from their little insight, the nugget they got from the workshop, from the experience. I mean, you probably had those case studies yourself, that people have come back and said, 4 years ago, I saw this. But I think the amount of that wave of people you've helped is really profound. And I'm really touched you spent the time with us today. And for those listening, my biggest gratitude to Bernardo is that he's here with us. And really the last word for you, Bernardo, is he sort of pause, stop, reset. Anything you want to leave our listeners with before we wrap up the show?
No, I think kind of I've said it all. I think if anything, it's just that. It's just simply, explore and share more love. I think there's never been a more important time to bring love to the forefront of all our conversations. And you were just saying about, the effect that, someone coming into an event, it's happened to me, but one kind word, one kind sentence that you say to someone unexpectedly out of nowhere could just have the most phenomenal effect. And just it's the easiest thing to do. So I would just encourage people just to become kinder, to share more love, and to explore kind of what is it they're here to do with love in this world.
Thank you, Bernardo. And with that was Pause, Stop, Reset. Goodbye. Once again, I'm Simon Hedley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value, and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pause.reset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.